I'd like to have a petition someday to say, hey, here's a list of 4,000 farmers that want this. Bring it to the ag minister and say, hey, like, you guys are going to get really good credit for this. And we can't stop that from happening. It is capitalism, but the fair thing to ask on the market would be to have more information transparency. And in my opinion, it's the right thing to do.
What we need to do in the industry is to start with the end goal.
Just going to bring you on, Connor, and then I'm going to read this comment first, and we'll just get you let you get settled in here. If you're don't have a cat filter on or anything like that, you never know. Hopefully you're appropriate for the airwaves. But Luke Dirksen says it feels like the lack of export transparency and accessible market data has been an ongoing issue in Canada for decades, yet we still haven't seen any meaningful policy action to address it. I think that's why we're here. Otherwise, we would be, I don't know, what would we be talking about, Ryan, if we weren't talking about this? We'd be talking about something else.
Maybe something.
Do you believe this is something that could realistically be solved by a private industry-led initiative instead of government? And if so, what level of cooperation would actually be required from grain companies and exporters to make it effective? From the outside, it often feels like parts of the industry benefit from information asymmetry. I love that. Yes, it's an information war of asymmetry for sure, where limited transparency becomes a source of leverage rather than something there's incentive to approve. I could have used like a little piano behind that, but
it's 100% right.
Go ahead.
Information asymmetry does benefit some. And to that point on like, how do we do this? This has been spoken about a long time. I'd say we just don't have enough folks behind the movement to really push for this type of thing. So part of this podcast, that we're doing here today and hoping to do other ones is get more farmers understanding what this might be available to them. And it's something they should ask for. I know that there's certain of the grain groups that have this on their radar and they're looking to improve it. But from my experience on a political standpoint, we need more grassroots folks asking for it is what we really, really need on that side. It's going to take time. But I do believe that it's possible if enough folks, again, ask their people for it. And I'd like to have a petition someday to say, hey, here's a list of 4,000 farmers that want this. Bring it to the ag minister and say, hey, like, you guys are going to get really good credit for this. The opposition there is definitely going to be, the major grain companies. And what I'd say on this side, sorry, I'll let you go down in a second.
I love it. Everybody's wanting to jump in here.
What I'd say on this side is it's even more important to our market because of the amalgamation of some of these large grain companies in the past couple of years. The Bunge-Viterra merger and even Grains Connect and P&H, all of a sudden these companies have gotten so big and we can't stop that from happening. It is capitalism. But the fair thing to ask on the market would be to have more information transparency. And in my opinion, it's the right thing to do.
Ryan, if I can just add to your very eloquent statement, I think what we need to do in the industry is to start with the end goal. Not what all the participants want. What is our goal in the agri-food system? So, as I said earlier, if we want to maximize exports and overall GDP generated by agriculture, then improved data transparency and data quality is a shoo-in because it leads to improvements within the supply chain. It leads to increased income. You have a multiplier effect on all these things. So rather than looking at the various parts and what the opinions are of the various levels, where do we want to go? And then create a system that accommodates that. It's the only way to improve our productivity actually over the long run, piece by piece. So, let's quit looking at who wants what outcome do we want, and then go from there.
John, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I think Luke's question was, can it be solved by private industry or by government? My experience is it has to be government. And, to Marlene's point, Marlene has an industry hat on. She's interested in the industry, as I am. But the guys at Cargill have Cargill hats on. The guys at Bunge have Bunge hats on. Sure, and that's the way it should be. So they have their own private interests that come first. So the only way you get, I think, an industry movement like this is through government.
Just so everybody knows, like I've got my Dan Aberhart hat on too. Let's be real. Like we're not, we all have our self-interests.
I'll tell you a story. Back in 2012, at the end of the wheat board, I happened to be in a meeting with Jerry Ritz. Everybody was congratulating him. And I stood up and I said, thanks, Jerry. This is, you did all the heavy lifting. Getting rid of the wheat board was like pulling a tree out by its roots. A big job, but you got it done. The problem is now we have some landscaping to do to get a level playing field. And my thinking was exactly what we're talking about: export data information.
Here we are.
And price information. He wasn't happy. He thought the job was done. Fast forward to 3 years later, started working with the Alberta Grain Commission to produce pdqinfo.ca, a price information website where we got all the 7 major grain companies feeding their posted bids. We've already talked about how bad they are, into a black box, and PDQ pumps out 9 regional average prices. And it was like pulling teeth to get them to cooperate. There is no way they were going to. They even went to Ottawa, Western Grain Elevator Association, and complained to Jerry Ritz that we were doing this. They went to him because the federal government was funding this program. And luckily, Jerry said, well, you have a choice. You can either do this voluntarily, or I will legislate you to do it. You pick. And so they went home and they did it voluntarily.